What happens when one of Hollywood's most iconic stars walks onto a live set, the cameras rolling, the audience holding their collective breath, and every question carries the weight of the world? This is Halle Berry on The View, and from the very first second, you can feel it, the tension, the anticipation, the unspoken undercurrents that only live television can produce. Before we get into this explosive confrontation, make sure you subscribe to Studio Narrator, smash that like button, and drop a comment. Because what unfolds here is the kind of drama that has the internet talking for weeks. The audience cheers as Halle Berry enters the studio. Her presence is magnetic. The cameras swing to follow her every step. Dressed in a sleek, tailored black ensemble, she moves with a grace that commands attention. Her hair is perfectly styled, her makeup immaculate, yet there's something in her eyes, a flicker of alertness, a quiet wariness, that hints she's bracing for more than the standard polite interview. The applause crescendos, then fades, leaving a hush in the room. It's the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. The hosts greet her warmly. Whoopi Goldberg leans forward, her expression friendly but calculating, as though she's weighing every reaction, every inflection. Joy Behar's smile is bright, almost playful, but there's a glint in her eyes that suggests she's ready to probe, to dig beneath the surface. The cameras pivot between them, capturing the subtle power dynamics in the room. Halle responds with her signature charm, a poised smile, and a gracious nod, but the tension is palpable. Everyone senses that beneath the courtesy, a storm is brewing. The first questions are safe, almost ceremonial: projects, upcoming films, philanthropic endeavors. Halle answers with ease, her voice calm, her words measured. "I've been fortunate to work on projects that really resonate with people," she says, her tone warm yet guarded. "It's important for me to focus on meaningful stories and characters that inspire." The audience nods, some clapping lightly, some leaning forward in curiosity. But then the questions shift. Whoopi leans in, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Halle, your last interview sparked quite a conversation online. Some of it critical, some of it, well, let's just say intense. How do you respond to that?" Her voice is steady, almost gentle, but underneath, there's an unmistakable edge. Halle pauses. Just a fraction of a second, but long enough for the cameras to capture it. Her lips press together briefly, a subtle tightening of the jaw. It's a classic Halle Berry moment. She's considering every possible angle, every possible word, every possible misstep. And then she speaks, her voice soft yet firm. "I always try to stay focused on the work I'm proud of, not the noise that surrounds it." There's a calmness to her tone, a deliberate choice to not escalate, yet her words carry a weight, a quiet defiance. Joy Behar senses the hesitation and moves in. "But don't you think there's more to say? People are curious. They want honesty, not just PR lines," she presses, leaning forward with that characteristic insistence that has made her a formidable interviewer for decades. Her eyes lock onto Halle's, waiting for a crack, a revealing glance, anything that might give her the headline she seeks. The audience shifts in their seats, murmuring softly. Cameras catch a fan whispering to their friend. "She's holding back, isn't she?" Halle smiles faintly, a flicker of amusement crossing her features, almost imperceptible, almost a challenge. "I've learned that sometimes less is more," she says, her words deliberate, carefully measured. "Speaking too freely can fuel narratives that aren't true. And at this stage, I want my work to speak louder than speculation." The tension rises with every exchanged glance, every subtle nod, every micro-expression caught in high definition for millions of viewers at home. You can almost hear the collective intake of breath in the room. Whoopi leans back slightly, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth, and the subtle shift is noticeable. She's not used to being met with such precise control over the conversation. Joy Behar, undeterred, tilts her head, probing further. "But what about the personal side? Don't you feel like your story belongs to you to tell fully, without being filtered?" Halle's eyes flicker, just for a split second. She's weighing the room, the audience, the millions watching at home, the history of the show itself. And then, with quiet authority, she replies, "I do, absolutely. But timing matters. Words can be used against you, twisted into stories you never intended to tell. I've learned to protect my narrative while still being authentic." Her voice is steady, unwavering, but there's an undercurrent, a tension, a subtle steel that tells the viewer, "Don't push too far." The audience responds with a quiet hum, some murmuring, some nodding. Cameras pan to capture every detail. The way Halle's fingers graze the edge of the chair, the slight lift of an eyebrow, the subtle shifting of weight that signals alertness. There's a cinematic quality to the scene, the kind of moment directors dream of capturing, where every gesture carries meaning, every glance is loaded, and every word could ignite headlines. Joy Behar leans in again, softer this time, almost conspiratorial. But there's so much curiosity, Halle. Don't you feel the pressure? Halle's smile is faint, controlled, a perfect mask for the storm beneath. Pressure exists, she admits, almost whispering, but it doesn't control me. It informs me, shapes me, but it doesn't define the truth of who I am or what I've accomplished. The audience reacts subtly, a mixture of admiration and anticipation, sensing the delicate dance unfolding live on their screens. The air seems electric, charged with unspoken conflict. Every viewer at home feels it, the polite veneer of an interview and the simmering tension beneath. You can almost hear the whispered predictions. Something's coming. Wait for it. And then, just when the conversation seems to settle, there's a pause, a pregnant silence that stretches for a heartbeat longer than expected. The audience leans in. Whoopi adjusts slightly in her chair. Joy's smile is polite, but her eyes glint with anticipation. Halle meets them, eyes calm, posture perfect, yet there's a flicker of something wild, untamed, something you can't script. The stage is set for what is about to unfold. Questions that push, answers that resist, tension that simmers just below the surface. In this live, high-stakes moment, the interview transforms into something far more compelling than a simple conversation. It becomes a study in control, poise, and the subtle battle between curiosity and discretion. And the viewers at home? They're hooked. The comments section is already lighting up, the social media notifications are buzzing, and the cameras keep rolling. Every word, every glance, every pause is being dissected in real time, creating the perfect storm of drama that only live television can deliver. Halle Berry remains composed, a study in calm elegance, but the subtle tension in the room promises that this is just the beginning. What comes next could ignite conversations for weeks, maybe months, as the lines between public curiosity and personal privacy blur on live television. And as the camera captures every moment, every twitch, every glint in her eye, the story begins to unfold in all its dramatic, cinematic intensity. The silence doesn't last long. It never does on live television. Someone always breaks it. A cough in the audience. A shuffle of cue cards. A producer's voice faintly echoing through an earpiece. And then Joy Behar leans forward again, her voice softer now, almost sympathetic, which somehow makes it more dangerous. But Halle, she says, tilting her head slightly, when you say you're protecting your narrative, some people hear that as avoiding accountability. The word hangs in the air. Accountability. It lands heavier than expected. The audience reacts instantly, an audible ripple, a collective intake of breath. Somewhere in the front row, a woman crosses her arms. In the back, a man leans forward, eyes fixed on Halle as if waiting for a confession. Halle doesn't respond right away. The pause stretches. 1 second. 2. The cameras zoom in instinctively, catching the slight rise and fall of her chest. Inside, something shifts. You can see it in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, but calculation. Years of experience flash behind that gaze. Interviews gone wrong, words twisted into headlines, moments taken out of context and replayed endlessly. She finally speaks. I think accountability looks different depending on who's judging, she says carefully. And I've learned that public judgment doesn't always come from a place of understanding. Whoopi raises an eyebrow, intrigued. So you're saying the public doesn't understand you? She asks, her tone neutral but probing. I'm saying, Halle replies, turning slightly toward Whoopi, that the public sees fragments. Headlines. Clips. Not the full story. And fragments can be misleading. The audience murmurs again. Some nod. Others exchange glances. This is no longer a casual interview. This is a tightrope walk, and everyone can feel it. Joy isn't done. She smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. But when you're a public figure, she presses, don't you owe people more than fragments? You've inspired millions. Don't they deserve transparency? There it is. The pressure point. Inspiration versus privacy. Legacy versus boundaries. Halle inhales slowly. Her fingers tighten slightly on the armrest, a detail only the most attentive viewers will notice. I don't believe inspiration requires full access, she says. I believe it requires honesty. And honesty doesn't mean exposing every wound to prove you're real. A few audience members clap, tentative at first, then more confidently. The applause cuts through the tension like a blade. For a moment, Halle's shoulders relax. Just a fraction. Whoopi steps in, sensing the room teetering. You've been through a lot in this industry, she says, her voice lower now, more reflective. Do you think that's made you more guarded? Halle turns to her, grateful perhaps for the shift in tone, but wary. It's made me more intentional, she answers. There's a difference. Joy leans back slightly, crossing her legs. Intentional can also mean closed off, she counters. The audience reacts again, this time louder. A mix of gasps and whispers. The tension spikes. Social media, somewhere beyond the studio walls, is already exploding. Clips are being cut in real time. Tweets drafted. Opinions forming. Halle's expression hardens, just enough to signal a line being drawn. Or it can mean evolved, she says, her voice firmer now. Women, especially women in this industry, aren't allowed to change without being accused of something. That lands. Hard. The room stills. Even Joy seems momentarily caught off guard. Whoopi nods slowly, thoughtfully. The audience breaks into louder applause, some standing briefly before sitting back down, unsure if clapping is appropriate in such a charged moment. Joy clears her throat. No one's accusing you, she says quickly, though the defensive edge is noticeable. We're just asking questions. And I'm answering them, Halle replies calmly. Within my boundaries. The word boundaries echoes. It feels deliberate, strategic, almost defiant. There's a beat where no one speaks. The hosts glance at each other. Producers are likely whispering frantically off camera, deciding whether to steer the conversation back to safer ground or lean into the tension that's clearly captivating viewers. Whoopi chooses to lean in. Do you think, she asks slowly, that there's a moment where protecting yourself starts to look like distancing yourself from the people who supported you? Halle's eyes soften. This question hits closer to home. She looks out at the audience now, really looks at them, as if seeing individual faces instead of a collective blur. I don't distance myself from support, she says quietly. I distance myself from expectations that require me to relive pain for public consumption. The room is silent. No murmurs this time. No whispers. Just stillness. Joy exhales, tapping her card lightly against the table. Some people would say that pain is what makes stories powerful, she says, almost gently. Halle nods once. And some people forget that the person telling the story has to survive it first. That's the moment. You can feel it shift, the energy, the balance of power. The audience erupts into applause, louder and longer than before. Even a few of the hosts smile, though Joy's expression is more complex now, layered with something like reluctant respect. But the tension doesn't disappear. It morphs, changes shape. Joy leans forward one last time, voice low. So you're saying you'll never give the full story? Halle meets her gaze directly. I'm saying I'll give it when it's mine to give, not when it's demanded. The applause comes again, mixed with gasps. Whoopi lets out a lom, shaking her head slightly, impressed. The camera cuts to a wide shot of the table, the hosts, Halle centered among them, calm but resolute. The audience is buzzing now, energy crackling through the studio. Everyone knows they've just witnessed something rare. A celebrity refusing to bend, not with anger or theatrics, but with composure and clarity. As the segment teeters on the edge of escalation, one thing becomes clear. This conversation is far from over. The questions are sharper now. The stakes higher. And whatever comes next won't just stay in this studio. It's already spilling into the world beyond it. The applause fades, but the energy doesn't. It lingers, thick and restless, like static before a storm. Halle Berry sits perfectly still at the center of the table, shoulders squared, chin lifted, her expression calm but alert. If this were a chessboard, everyone watching would know one thing for sure now. The game has changed. Joy Behar breaks the silence first, her tone noticeably different. Less playful. More deliberate. You've mentioned pain a few times, she says slowly. And I think people hear that and wonder, what pain are we talking about, Halle? There it is. The question that doesn't ask outright, but demands everything. The audience reacts instantly. A sharp intake of breath ripples through the studio. Someone in the front row shakes their head slightly, as if silently pleading, don't go there. Cameras zoom in, catching Halle's face in unforgiving clarity. For a split second, something flickers, memory perhaps. Or restraint. Or both. Halle exhales through her nose, controlled, measured. The kind that doesn't need to be itemized to be real, she answers. Joy nods, but presses. But when you speak in generalities, people fill in the blanks. And sometimes, those blanks become rumors. Whoopi leans forward now, sensing the escalation. Joy, she interjects gently. I think. No, it's okay, Halle says, raising a hand slightly. Her voice is calm but authoritative. All eyes snap back to her. She's not wrong. People do fill in the blanks. But that doesn't mean I owe them the truth just to correct a lie. The audience murmurs again, louder this time. Social media, unseen but omnipresent, is undoubtedly on fire. Clips are already circulating. Captions being written. Opinions hardening in real time. Joy folds her hands together. But do you worry, she asks, that by staying silent, you allow others to control your story? Halle's jaw tightens subtly. I used to, she admits. I used to think silence was weakness. That if I didn't speak, I'd disappear. But what I learned is that constantly explaining yourself, that's another kind of cage. That word again. Cage. Whoopi nods slowly, eyes thoughtful. That resonates, she says quietly. Joy watches Halle closely, then changes tactics. Let me ask you this, she says. Do you think Hollywood punishes women who refuse to be vulnerable on command? The question lands like a spark on dry ground. Halle doesn't hesitate this time. Yes, she says simply. The audience reacts immediately, gasps, whispers, a few stunned laughs. Someone claps once, then stops, unsure. The tension spikes sharply, like a wire pulled too tight. Joy raises her eyebrows. Punishes how? Halle leans forward now, just slightly, closing the distance between herself and the hosts. Her voice lowers, more intimate, more dangerous. By labeling them difficult, cold, unrelatable. By questioning their authenticity. Men get to be private. Women get interrogated. The room is silent. Even Joy doesn't interrupt. Halle continues, momentum building. I've watched it happen. Not just to me. To others. The moment you say no, the narrative shifts. Suddenly, you're hiding something. Suddenly, you owe the world an explanation. Whoopi lets out a quiet, knowing sound. Joy taps her card against the table, slower now. But isn't vulnerability also power? She asks. It can be, Halle agrees. When it's chosen, not when it's extracted. The audience breaks into applause again, louder and more sustained. The camera cuts briefly to the crowd. Faces lit with intensity, some nodding emphatically, others conflicted, processing what they're hearing. Joy waits for the applause to die down. When she speaks again, her voice is calmer, but there's an edge of challenge still there. Some people watching might say, she's being evasive. What would you say to them? Halle doesn't look away from Joy. I'd say discomfort doesn't mean dishonesty, she replies. It means you didn't get what you wanted. That stings. You can feel it. A ripple of reaction moves across the table. Whoopi leans back, impressed. One of the other hosts shifts in her seat, eyes wide. The audience reacts with a mix of applause and sharp murmurs. Joy exhales slowly. That's a strong statement. So is demanding access to someone's pain, Halle says, not unkindly but firmly. For a moment, it feels like the interview might tip into open confrontation, the kind that headlines are built on. Producers are almost certainly debating whether to cut to commercial. But no one moves. No one wants to break this moment. Whoopi steps in again, voice steady. Halle, do you feel misunderstood right now? Halle considers the question. Her gaze drifts briefly to the audience, then back to the table. I feel observed, she says. There's a difference. Joy nods slowly. Observed by whom? By a culture that loves stories, Halle answers. But sometimes forgets there are people inside them. The studio is completely silent now. No murmurs. No whispers. Just the hum of lights and the soft whir of cameras. Joy finally leans back, uncrossing her legs. You're very controlled, she says, almost admiringly. Do you ever worry that control costs you connection? Halle smiles faintly. Not defensive. Not sharp. Just honest. I worry more about losing myself trying to be understood. That's the line. You can feel it land, not just in the room, but beyond it. The kind of sentence that gets quoted, replayed, dissected. The audience erupts into applause, some standing now, unable to contain it. Whoopi claps openly. Even Joy smiles, though there's a complexity in her expression that suggests she knows this conversation has gone somewhere unexpected. As the applause continues, Halle sits back, shoulders relaxing for the first time since the segment began. She hasn't raised her voice. She hasn't stormed off. But she has drawn a clear, unmovable line. And as the cameras keep rolling, one thing becomes undeniable. This isn't just an interview anymore. It's a reckoning. A moment where poise meets pressure, and silence speaks louder than any confession ever could. And the aftermath? It's already forming. The applause doesn't fade gently this time. It crashes. Loud. Uncontrolled. Some people in the audience are on their feet now, clapping with purpose, while others remain seated, stunned, trying to process what they've just witnessed. The energy in the studio has completely transformed. This is no longer a polite morning talk show segment. It feels like a cultural moment unfolding in real time. Halle Berry sits quietly, hands folded, breathing slow and steady. The storm didn't break her. If anything, it sharpened her. The cameras linger on her face, searching for cracks, for triumph, for exhaustion. What they find instead is resolve. Whoopi Goldberg is the first to speak, her voice cutting through the noise with authority. "Well," she says, nodding slowly, "that was real." The audience laughs softly, relieved, grateful for the acknowledgement. And whether people agree or not, Whoopi continues, it's honest. Joy Behar looks toward Halle, her expression layered. Part respect, part contemplation, part something harder to name. "You've given people a lot to think about," she says. "There's no edge now. No push. Just acknowledgement." Halle offers a small nod. "That was my intention." The show moves toward a commercial break, but the atmosphere refuses to settle. Even as the hosts thank Halle and the audience applauds once more, there's a sense that the real conversation is only just beginning, outside these walls. When the cameras finally cut away, the studio buzz doesn't stop. Audience members lean toward each other, voices overlapping. "Did you hear what she said about women being interrogated? That line about pain being extracted, wow." She didn't back down. At all. Phones are already out. Clips are being replayed. Posts are being drafted before the episode even ends. Somewhere, a producer watches the trending tab climb. Within minutes of the segment airing, social media ignites. Short clips flood timelines. Halle's calm, steady voice paired with bold captions. Discomfort doesn't mean dishonesty. Vulnerability isn't power when it's demanded. I worry more about losing myself trying to be understood. Support pours in. Actors, journalists, everyday viewers. She said what so many feel. Finally, someone held the line. That wasn't evasive, that was boundaries. But backlash follows just as fast. She dodged the questions. Public figure, public responsibility. Why go on the show if you won't open up? Think pieces appear within hours. Some praise her composure as masterful. Others dissect her pauses, her tone, her word choices, frame by frame, as if searching for something she refused to give. Entertainment blogs call it tense. Opinion columns call it necessary. Commentators argue whether Halle Berry just redefined vulnerability or reinforced celebrity distance. And in the middle of it all, Halle stays silent. No tweet. No follow-up interview. No clarification post. That silence becomes part of the story, too. Back on The View, the hosts reflect briefly the next day. Whoopi defends the conversation, calling it one of the most honest moments we've had in a long time. Joy acknowledges the intensity, admitting, "Not every guest responds the same way, and that's okay." But the clip keeps circulating, keeps resurfacing, keeps being rewatched late at night by viewers who felt seen, and by others who felt challenged. For some, Halle Berry became a symbol of strength. For others, a reminder of the tension between access and autonomy. For everyone watching, a moment that refused to be easily categorized. And maybe that's why it lingers. Because what happened wasn't explosive in the way people expect. No shouting, no walk-off, no viral meltdown. Just a woman sitting under bright lights, choosing her words with precision, refusing to trade her peace for approval. In a media world that feeds on oversharing, restraint felt radical. As the dust settles, one thing is undeniable. This wasn't just an interview. It was a boundary drawn in real time. And whether viewers admired it or questioned it, they couldn't look away. Now it's your turn. Did Halle Berry handle the pressure with grace, or did she hold back too much? Were the hosts pushing for truth, or crossing a line? Drop your opinion in the comments below. We want to hear where you stand. And if you want more explosive, cinematic, emotionally charged stories like this, stories that pull you inside the moment and leave you questioning long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to Studio Narrator right now. Because some moments aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be felt.